To talk about this, I'm joined by Michael Wehner. He's a senior scientist at the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory in California. Thank you for joining us here on BBC News. In scientific terms, just how extraordinary is this cold snap?
Well, this cold snap is caused by a cold Arctic air mass that was steered over the eastern United States by an unusual but not unprecedented jet stream pattern. I'm a climate change scientist specializing in attributing the human influence, if any, on extreme weather events like this. And the question that's interesting to me is, did global warming change the general circulation of the atmosphere to make this type of airflow more likely?
You mentioned global warming. Of course, we're always being warned to be careful not to conflate climate change and individual weather events. So should we be reading something into these cold temperatures then?
Well, I think actually we probably should. This still remains an interesting question about these kinds of cold waves, and I'm a bit skeptical, to use a word, but the physics is sound for this kind of mechanism. The question, I think, is have we experienced enough climate change to detect and attribute this kind of pattern of circulation change for the atmosphere?
So just Excuse me, just to be clear then, are cold snaps like this happening more or less frequently?
I don't think we can tell right at this point. What we do know, though, is that winters are milder in general. And so these temperatures, which are cold, are unusual, and more unusual now than they would have been, say, 30 years ago. And so as a society, we've adapted sort of subconsciously to somewhat warmer winters. And so when we do get these kinds of cold temperatures, which are not all that unusual 30 or 40 years ago, they're seem to be more unusual to us today.
So essentially you are saying that there could be something in this then?
Oh, I think so. You know, we've gotten to the point where there's been enough climate change. There's been 1 degree on the global average since the pre-industrial times, that we are finding more and more extreme weather events have been either made more severe or more likely, or both, by this rather substantial change to the climate system. And so we've often said, you know, don't confuse weather and climate, but I think we're reaching the point where individual weather events have a climate change component to them.
Yeah, I think it was last week that President Trump tweeted something along the lines of, you know, bring back global warming because of this cold weather. I know you're a scientist, you might not want to comment on political things, but do you find comments like that quite frustrating?
Oh, yes, we do, especially when you know, we know that the weather, which is, you know, our day-to-day experience, is actually influenced by the climate. And so it is often confused by many people that, you know, this event, you know, is really climate change or is really not, when in fact you need to examine the entirety of the weather record.
Okay, Michael Wehner, it has been fascinating talking to you. Thank you for joining.